There are 7 weeks of different topics on leading, managing and developing people. Week 8 is a review and revision week. We also have a mock exam week when we ask you to submit the mock exam, which we've previously issued to you. You are provided with feedback on that mock exam, and then that helps you fine-tune the areas you need to work on prior to the actual examination itself, which takes place in one of the assessment weeks for the semester. The module is assessed by a 24-hour online examination, and that will take place from Monday the 16th to Tuesday the 17th of May 2022. All of the questions in the exam will be based on this semester's case study, and the case study is called the Global League for Equine Welfare. You get very familiar with the case study. It's in the module handbook. You'll be expected to read it every week. We will talk about the case study in class every week, and your homework activities will be guided around the case study. There are 2 sections to the assessment. Section A is one compulsory question covering the main module issues regarding HR, leadership, management, change management and flexibility, which is the first part of the module. That compulsory question is worth 50% of the marks. The second part of the exam is section B, and in section B there are 4 equally weighted questions. There is 1 each on resourcing, performance management, learning and development and employee relations. You will choose 2 of the 4 questions. Each of those questions is worth 25% of the module marks. For more information about the exam at this early stage in the module, please check out the audio PowerPoint LMDP preliminary exam briefing in the LMDP assessment area on the My Beckett site for the module. I'd now like to say a little bit about what this module is about. So on leading, managing and developing people, we offer an introduction to the world of contemporary human resource management and human resource development. And we will look at that world from 2 particular perspectives, 2 stances. The first stance is an academic stance. So we look at research in the areas of HR or leadership or management, whatever topic that we're looking at in the particular week. But we also look at the role of the practitioner in that area as well, the person who's actually working in the field. And what we are required to do as tutors and students on the module is achieve a synthesis of the perspective of the academic and the practitioner, and we do that through the vehicle of our assessment case study. The module is an opportunity for research and reflection and the development of what we call an analytical and critically evaluative perspective. So in other words, you will read the work of various, some of them quite well-known writers on particular topics. And at postgraduate level, it's not a question of simply accepting what they have written as fact. We expect you to question what they've written. We expect you to analyse the circumstances in which they were writing and therefore decide whether or not what they've written, what they've published, what they've said is potentially fact is applicable in the context in which we are working now. Now, this module is an introductory module. It's a foundation, if you like, for the other modules on the programme. It's got a little bit of everything in it, and that's why we teach it to you in the first semester of your course. So there are 7 LMDP topics. The first topic that we start to look at in the first week looks at HR in theory and in practice, so the theoretical perspective and the practitioner perspective, and some of which we introduce you to in this week is something that's studied in a little bit more detail in the module Strategic Context of Human Resource Management, which you'll either study in your first semester if you're a full-time student or your second semester if you're a part-time student. We then move on and have an overview of effective leadership and management, because HR practitioners, HR managers are also required to demonstrate leadership and to have management skills. We then look at change management and the concepts of flexible working. And HR managers are very, very much the drivers of change within an organisation. And the concept of flexible working is one that we've been looking at for a long time. But of course, with the onset of the pandemic, it's something that we've learned a lot more about, shall we say, in the last sort of 18 months, 2 years. The last 4 topics on the module are dedicated HR topics. So we look at people resourcing. That covers concepts including recruitment and selection. We look at learning and development. We look at performance management, which looks a little bit at things like appraisals and reward systems. And we also look at employee relations. In other words, how people get on with each other at work and how managers can seek to effect positive working relationships with their staff. Before we go on, just click on this particular little bit of video, and it's a short, light-hearted look back at the history of how we've got to human resource management today. So moving on a little bit to our main topic for today, which is HR in theory and practice in the workplace. And what we're trying to do is to start thinking about how we differentiate between human resource management as a function or a set of activities within an organisation, which can include things like resourcing and performance management. HR as a concept or a model or a way of managing people in an organisation, and there are lots of different perspectives on how that might be done. And also HR issues in the wider environmental context in which we are operating. So what is HR about? We could say that there are 2 key meanings. Number 1 is HR as a very general, generic term. And number 2 as a very particular way of going about managing people. Of course, those 2 are not mutually exclusive. Let's explore them in the next few slides. So here we are. Here's the first meaning, human resource management as a generic term. And there are several different ways of thinking about human resource management as a generic term. The CIPD separate HR into the 4 areas of resourcing, learning and development, performance management and employee relations. This particular slide has been adapted from Torrington et al., which is one of our most significant textbooks, and it looks at HR in a slightly different way in terms of thinking about the foundations of HR activity. And that's emphasised in the way of objectives. So in the top left-hand corner, we've got performance objectives covering areas like performance management and reward, thinking about motivation and commitment, trying to achieve an engaged workforce, trying to achieve a high-performing workforce, thinking about the concept of human capital, which is something that we will explore on the module. On the top right-hand corner, we've got what they've called staffing objectives, covering things like recruitment and selection, training and development, talent management, concepts such as employer branding and employer of choice, which we will come on to later on in the module. There are change management objectives, so thinking about concepts such as flexible or hybrid working, avoiding conflict, expectation, how we can minimise stress when we're having to drive through change. And on the bottom right-hand corner, we've got what we call administrative objectives, which is the day-to-day, extremely important admin type role that the HR practitioner is often engaged in. And there are sometimes, well, there are always legal requirements when we're managing people, but also, and they don't just extend to things like tax and national insurance. If we don't ensure that our administrative systems are appropriate, then we lose credibility as an organisation. So again, this is something that's a key part of the HR practitioner role. And this slide sums up those key areas in terms of objectives. You can read more about it in the Torrington textbook, and you'll find the references for the materials that have been used in this presentation and all of the presentations on this module in the final slide of the set.